Right, hello guys, and welcome back. The brand new character stat system introduced in the Edge of Fate expansion is both brilliant and incredibly in-depth. So many facets of the game that were previously unaffected by stats now fall under that umbrella, and entirely new interactions are now possible thanks to how primarily the stats interact with their respective areas, but also how the stats interact with each other, which, as you'll come to see, leads to some seriously strong combos which you might not have known about. Which is why I'm bringing you this video here today to limit test and therefore showcase the absolute limits of each and every character stat, including the exact benefits that each one provides at the maximum value of 200, special interactions, and key things to remember. And if you like this type of massive breakdown style of content, then a like and subscribe is greatly appreciated. So without further ado, let's begin with both the melee and super stats. Previously known as strength, melee is the new stat that governs everything to do with character melees. From the range of 0 to 100 points, increasing your investment in melee reduces the cooldown of your melee abilities, as well as increasing the amount of chunk melee energy gained from all sources. For example, at 0 melee stat, collecting my throwing hammer returns roughly 50% of it back, but at exactly 55 melee, the charge is fully refunded. From 101 to 200 points, furthering your investment will instead increase the actual damage of all sources of melee damage you possess, including glaives, powered and unpowered melees, up to the maximum 30% at 200 stat. This melee damage increase is also multiplicative, unlike every other source of melee damage increases, which are all additive, which unsurprisingly as a result makes it an essential investment for any melee focused build. Super, previously known as intellect, is the new stat which governs everything to do with your guardian's super abilities. From the range of 0 to 100 points, investing in super will increase the amount of super energy gained from all sources, including things like direct damage, armor mods, or certain exotic gear pieces. From 101 to 200 points, furthering your investment will instead increase the damage of your super abilities, bar a couple exceptions which we will get into, where at the maximum of 200 your supers will all be dealing exactly 45% more damage compared to base. Now the reason why I want to cover both of these stats together rather than separately is because when it comes to reaching their limits, these two stats have a seriously cool interaction, and that is that for certain super abilities, the damage of them scales with both your super and melee stats. One of these supers is the Arc Hunter Arc Staff, where normally at less than 100 super and melee, the light attack swing deals 384 damage. However, with 200 super only, this gets raised to 557, which is the expected 45% increase. But then, if you have both 200 super and 200 melee, the light attack now deals 724 damage, which is exactly the same number you'd get were you to multiply the base value of 384 by 1.45 and 1.3 times, which by the way is an 89% increase to your base super damage. And that's not even considering damage boosting exotics. And here, enter Raiden Flux. Raiden Flux is an exotic hunter chess piece that increases the damage of your Arcstaff super by scoring consecutive hits with it, granting you up to 3 stacks of synapse junctions. And each stack also decreases the drain rate of the super itself, letting you score more attacks. And I'll have the data on screen for exactly how much each stack of the buff increases your damage, so when you bring it all together, a 200 super, 200 melee Arcstaff with Raiden Flux deals a staggering 45,763 damage. But wait, there's more. This season, we have the Shield Crush artifact perk, and it states that while you have Woven Mail, Frost Armor, or a Void Overshield, your melee recharges faster and deals increased damage. And guess what? This melee damage increase also applies to Arcstaff. As a side note, the Overshield granted by a fully stacked Star Eater Scales also counts for the purposes of Shield Crush. So again, pairing a 200-200 Arcstaff with Raiden Flux at 3 stacks and Shield Crush, the entire combo now deals 68,643 damage, which is honestly pretty absurd, especially when you consider that a Curus of the Falling Star Thunder Crash at 200 super deals around 15,000 damage, less than 4 times as much as Arcstaff. And yes, I know this is somewhat impractical and apples to oranges, but it is a very cool piece of tech to be aware of nonetheless. And it just goes to show you how far you can truly push things with the proper stat investment. Other supers that scale fully off both the super and melee stats include Spectral Blades and Silk Strike. However, there are some supers that only partially scale with the melee stat, and the difference here is the nature of the attack being performed. The Titan Fist of Havoc light attack scales with both super and melee, but the heavy slam attack is only super. The Titan Burning Maul is also rather weird, where only a point-blank heavy slam scales with both super and melee. Neither the light attack Cyclone nor the ranged heavy slam attack scale with melee, only the point-blank heavy slam. Sentinel Shield also scales with both super and melee for any contact-based attacks, whereas the Shield Throw and Shield Guard do not. And finally, the light light attack and subsequent delayed explosion from Glacial Quake also scale with super and melee. The heavy slam does not, neither does any damage triggered from exploding stasis crystals. As for Warlocks, the only super that scales off multiple stats is Song of Flame, and actually the rabbit hole goes a little deeper this time. For Song of Flame specifically, the damage of the enhanced Incinerator Snap scales with both super and melee, but also the damage of the Wisp Grenade scales with both super and grenade. And at this point you might be wondering, how on earth am I going to get 200 grenade, 200 melee, and 200 super in order to maximize the damage of my Song of Flame? Well, here's the neat part. You don't. Because recently it's been discovered that activating Song of Flame grants the caster plus 100 to their grenade, melee, and class stats, meaning that if your character has 100 grenade and melee at base, casting Song of Flame instantly bumps you to 200 in both. Then all that's left is to get 150 super, use 3 super fonts on the helmet, then Robert is your uncle, you've got 200 in all 3. Damage-wise, a setup like this, also featuring Shield Crush and a Spirit of the Star Eater exotic class item, is able to output 54,175 damage, which is nowhere near as much as Arc Staff, sure, but it's still pretty impressive. Wrapping things up for this section with some miscellaneous items, both Aga's Scepter and Still Hunt have unique weapon-based super modes, and while yes, they do interact with your super in the case of Aga's and like a super in the case of Still Hunt, neither of these special modes scale their damage based on the super stat. Instead, they scale with the weapon stat. Furthermore, because Well of Radiance and Ward of Dawn are physically incapable of being offensive supers, investing past 100 super instead increases the lifetime of the construct in question, and at 200 super, both Well of Radiance and Ward of Dawn will now last for a total of 40 seconds, where at base they are both 30 seconds, which is a pretty cool compromise. Now all that Bungie needs to do is give back Weapons of Light to Bubble and make it a 30% damage buff, please. 200 super also has no effect on your weapon damage if you are the Well caster, because as some of you may know, if you are the Well caster, your weapon damage technically counts as super damage. Additionally, both Tether variants do not have their debuff potencies or durations increased. Silence and Squall does not last longer, and Twilight Arsenal's relic axes are not affected by either super or melee at all. Finally, for any exotics that grant a fixed amount of super energy on super end, like Celestial Nighthawk, Orpheus Rig, or Skull of Dire Ahamkara, you could be at 0 super and still have Orpheus refund 50% energy, or be at 100 and see the same effect. Next, we are covering the grenade stat, previously known as Discipline, which governs everything to do with your Guardian's grenades. From 0 to 100 points, investing in grenade will reduce the cooldown of your grenade abilities, as well as increasing the amount of chunk grenade energy gained from all sources. For example, while wearing Starfire Protocol and scoring empowered weapon kills, at 17 grenade stat it takes just over 9 red bar kills to fully refund your grenade, but at 100 grenade stat this amount is brought down to just over 3 kills. From 101 to 200 points, investing further will increase the damage of all grenade-based damage sources, up to the maximum 65% at 200 stat. The biggest highlight when testing the limits of this particular stat comes in the form of its behavior when combined with the grapple melee ability, because, dear viewer, a strand grapple melee counts as both grenade and melee damage at the exact same time, but also for any other melee or grenade based things. For example, a grapple melee kill will spawn an orb of power should you have either heavy-handed or firepower equipped on your gloves. So what this means is that grapple melee damage scales off not only the grenade stat but the melee stat as well. At base, with no increase from grenade and melee, my grapple melee deals 778 damage. When I have less than 100 melee and exactly 200 grenade, my grapple melee deals 1284 damage, a damage increase of 65%. But now, when I raise my melee stat to 150, the damage of my grapple melee is raised to 1477, the expected multiplicative 15% more from the added melee investment. Unfortunately, there aren't any other grenades in the game that behave quite as uniquely as grapple melee does, so for any of you hunters out there that are enjoying the grapple melee combo blow spam recently, definitely keep this in mind. As far as other grenade stat limits are concerned, I wanted to bring your attention to some specific examples I thought would be good to be aware of. With Controverse Hold, even at 100 grenade stat, the grenade energy returned is still roughly 45%, which is either a bug or intentional, but could do with a buff. Ashen Wake requires only 3 red bar kills to fully refund your fusion grenade charge at 100 grenade when compared to low grenade, which is rather nice, and the Titan Unbreakable aspect does have its blast damage affected by the grenade stat past 100 points. For hunters, Gunpowder Gamble damage is indeed affected by grenade stat investment, and finally, the Ionic Sentry turret for Arc Warlock is sadly not getting its chain damage increased by investing in upwards of 100 grenade. Next, we are tackling the health stat. This is completely new and governs several things relating to your Guardian's health. For starters, from 0 to 100 points, investing in health will increase the amount of health granted from collecting an Orb of Power, where at exactly 100 health you receive 70 HP. You also gain an increasing amount of flinch resistance, but that's not particularly relevant in PvE. As for the 101 to 200 point range, investing further in health will make it so your shield health begins to regenerate faster upon exiting combat, as well as increasing the capacity of your shields. I should note that approximately 2/3 of a Guardian's health is made up of shields, with the rest being referred to as your actual health. And by default, at less than 101 health, Guardians have 70 health points and 130 shield points. However, at 200 health, a Guardian now has 150 shield points, or 20 extra than normal, which is honestly not a lot more. However, the biggest thing you'll notice by far is how quickly your shields regenerate. Credit goes to Oftly for creating this video here that clearly showcases the differences. Though in all honesty, this isn't needed at all in PvE with how many sources of healing are available these days. And health is definitely more of a PvP oriented investment, so my advice, don't go anywhere past 70 health in PvE ever. Next we have the class stat, which again is entirely new and governs everything to do with your Guardian's class abilities. From 0 to 100 points, investing in class will improve the base ability cooldown of your class ability, as well as any chunk energy gains from whatever source it may be. And the best example I can give here is with Radiant Dance Machines, because at exactly 0 class, it takes approximately 12 red bar kills to fully refund my acrobat dodge, but with 100 class, this now gets brought down to around 5 kills. I should also note that the overflow dodge charges from Radiant Dance Machines aren't governed by your class stat. Instead, they are tied to a hidden meter progression that coincidentally also requires 3 red bar kills or 1 orange bar, and so on. Anyway, back to the main point. From 101 to 200 points, investing further into class will allow class abilities to bestow an overshield upon use, with the potency and duration of it depending on level of investment and the type of class ability used. At 200 class, performing a Phoenix Dive grants a 5-second 40 HP overshield. But fun fact, this overshield has an intrinsic 50% damage resistance, effectively making it an 80 HP overshield. Furthermore, the duration of the overshield does depend on the type of class ability used. For any Hunter Dodge, Thruster, or Phoenix Dive, the duration is 5 seconds, including the Ascension aspect, and for any Barricade or Rift, the duration is instead 10 seconds. And for an even more quirky example, if you're using Thruster and Icefall Mantle, you still get a 10-second overshield, despite having Thruster equipped. For some more examples, at least 60 class, Mask of Bacchus requires only 2 kills to fully refund your dodge charge while Light Shift is active, and I've also made a pretty cool build on this, so go check that out if you're interested after this video. Lastly, and a rather weird example, is Starfire Protocol. This has a secondary trait where any fusion grenade kill will fully refund your class ability charge. However, I'm not sure if this is intentional or not, but you can actually get away with having 0 class stat and your full charge will still be refunded. So I'm guessing this is probably a bug, but just something to be aware of regardless. As a side note before we move on, the overshield granted by the class stat does not allow for Shield Crush to activate its melee boosting component. In fact, here's a full list of what does and doesn't work for Shield Crush procured by Court, which you can pause and read if you'd like to. The last stat on the list is weapons. Again, another completely new stat which, as you might expect, governs a few things related to your weapons. From 0 to 100 points, investing in weapons does 2 things. Number 1, it improves the handling and reload speed of your weapons, and number 2, it increases your weapon damage against minor and major combatants. And at 100 stats, you have 10% faster reload and handling speeds, as well as 15% increased damage for primaries and specials, and 10% increased damage for heavies against minors and majors. From 101 to 200 points, again, there are 2 things happening. For one, every ammo break you create has a chance to drop more ammo, and you also deal further increased damage to bosses, mini-bosses, and champions. At 200 stat, your ammo breaks have a 100% chance to contain more ammo, and you'll also be dealing 15% more primary and special weapon, as well as 10% more heavy weapon damage to bosses and mini-bosses. Also 5% more damage to guardians, but that isn't terribly important. The weapon stat, the new ammo system, and ammo generation as a whole deserve their own video, which coincidentally I will be making soon. So for now, I'm just going to leave things here, as there really isn't much more to say without going way in depth. And the topic of ammo gen as a whole is more suited to its own project, so pardon me if you will. With that said though, this has been your guide to know everything you could possibly want to know about the limits of the brand new stat system. I hope you enjoyed watching and perhaps learned something new. A major amount of research for this video was done by Court Projects, who also happens to have a wealth of infographics that summarize what we have discussed today. So if you want to browse those for yourself, I've left a link to Court's Discord's link tree for you to take a look yourself if you're wanting to really get the information down. If you'd like to see more research or analytical based content, then do let me know by leaving a like and subscribing, as it shows me people want to see more of this in the future. But until then, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now, dear viewer.